Hello and welcome to the Mighty Oaks Show. Glad to have you with us today. My name is Jeremy Stalnecker. I'm the Executive Director of the Mighty Oaks Foundation, and this is my lovely wife, Susanne Stalnecker. She is, among other things, my wife, a mother to our children, and the Women's Director here at the Mighty Oaks Foundation. And we're going to talk about our women's program a little bit today, and more broadly, not just our women's program, but hopefully offer some helps to women generally who maybe they have served in the military, maybe they're married to someone who served in the military, maybe they're just a woman, and some of the insights that we can share today will be a help. But I wanted to talk about some of these things, and I'm excited that we can do that. Susanne and I, over the last couple of months, have been recording another show for Mighty Oaks called The Imperfect Show, little plug, commercial for The Imperfect Show. You can find that on the Mighty Oaks YouTube page. And that's been fun. That's just been us talking about some things that are going on in our lives or more broadly in other people's lives, and trying to share our experience of being imperfect people with the rest of the world. So we have a good time talking about these things and thought it would be fun to get on today. If you are watching on YouTube and you have not yet subscribed to our channel, please do that. Take some time to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then as important, hit the notification bell. That lets you know when other content, additional content comes online. And in addition to the Mighty Oaks Show, we have tons of content being put onto our YouTube channel all of the time. Again, I mentioned the Imperfect Show, other shows that we do, other content that we produce, many testimonials of people who have been to our program and have really found hope and help and healing and direction, and those things can be an encouragement to you as well. And then just some videos that are just informational, just some things that you can receive. I'd love for you to get all of that, so take some time to subscribe if you haven't, hit the notification bell. Feel free as well to share this content, to like, to leave comments, and we would love to get that from you, and look forward to continuing to share this with you. For our partners at Mojo 50, again, thank you for listening. Always a privilege to be able to emphasize the great relationship that we have with Mojo 50. What a wonderful organization, wonderful network, and we're glad to be there. When you stop listening to this, again, jump over to YouTube, and you can subscribe and you can find our other content there, and we would love to share that with you, and look forward to these conversations every time that we have them. So, you ready? You ready? I like to tell Susanne I'm just here to make her look good, but we all know that it's the other way around. But you are again, among other things, you're the director of the Mighty Oaks Foundation's Women's Legacy Program. Mm-hmm. As we get started, and again, I want us to talk specifically about some things that can just be a help to women, but we need to kind of frame that first and start with the platform of our program and what it is and what we do, and then beyond that, some maybe advice that we would give, I use that we very generally, advice that you would give to ladies who are struggling perhaps in some areas. So why don't you start by talking about the Women's Legacy Program, what it is, who we serve, the process of that, what it looks like, what someone could expect if they attended, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Our Women's Legacy Program for the Mighty Oaks Foundation is a faith-based program, and the premise of it is presenting the biblical blueprint of the woman that God created us to be. Right. We serve a very broad spectrum of women, which makes us pretty unique. We have ladies that come to us that are first responders, veterans, active duty military, and spouses of any of those. Right. And so it really is an interesting environment, and it's a very, I think it does make us unique, like I said. We, I believe, are maybe the only program for women that kind of encompasses all of those roles, or those,
And we would say, in all of our programs, our men's program as well, that we serve the same demographic, veterans, active duty service members, first responders, or the spouses of those. But just the numbers being what they are, on the men's program we'll have maybe a spouse of a first responder or a veteran every few programs.
Right. Yeah.
But on the women's side, just because of the numbers, it really breaks down to probably about 50%. Is that right? Yeah. Spouses, and then the other half would be veterans, perhaps active duty service members, and then maybe a spouse who's also one of those other things?
Yeah, I would say when we first started, it was mostly spouses and a couple of veterans or active duty military ladies. Now it's probably that. It's probably a good half,
Right.
that come to us to our programs that are spouses, and then we have active duty and or veterans. Now, what we're starting to see a little bit of as well is ladies that are both. We have they're a spouse and a veteran, or they're active duty still. So that is pretty, unique, and it's very interesting to try to serve, that whole spectrum of ladies. And what someone can really expect when they come to us is, I think maybe not what they think about when they first sign up to come to the women's program. And so that always makes it really interesting that when a woman signs up, she often has in her mind, this is why I want to go to a women's program. I need this for this specific purpose, or to help my spouse, or to be more effective in serving my community or other people like me. And so when they come to us, their expectations often are one, and they find out that it's something else.
Right.
But what they can expect from us is really a very open, honest teaching and relationships from ladies who have been in the same place where they are. And I think that is really dynamic, and it creates an environment where women start to feel really comfortable and start to feel kind of connection with some ladies that maybe they haven't felt before. It's just really different than having a support group in your neighborhood. I know just from when we lived on base, there's neighbors, there's other wives whose husbands are deployed, and you kind of find there's connection with that. There's kind of like someone else is going through the same thing that I am. Right. This is really unique because we create an environment where ladies are more maybe open to sharing struggles, maybe something that you wouldn't share with a neighbor, or a friend group that you have at the park, that you meet at the park on base or something. Yeah. And so that's kind of what can be expected when ladies come to us for a program.
So one of the important aspects of the Mighty Oaks programs, all of our programs, is that they're what we would describe as peer-to-peer programs. Mm-hmm. So it's not a clinician of some kind or a therapist speaking to their patients, or even a teacher speaking to their students. It's very much a peer-to-peer. Right. I am what you are. I've struggled the way that you've struggled and been through some of that. On our women's program, or in our women's program, it's exactly the same.
Yes.
Can you talk about your own experience as a military spouse, some of the struggles that that you recognized, or maybe you recognize in hindsight now, looking back over those things, and I guess in all of that, why you care about spouses, and then talk about some of the other instructors that we have who are part of our program. Because again, one of the things that makes it work, as interesting as the dynamic is that we have instructors who can speak to each group of people that are there. So maybe start with your own experience, for those that don't know you or know us really well, and then talk about some of the other instructors that are part of the program.
Right. So some of you know us and kind of know a little bit about us and our background, but Jeremy was in the Marine Corps for 4 years, active duty, sometime before and after that, reserve, whatever.
Whatever. Whatever.
I would say probably the majority of the time that Jeremy was in the Marine Corps, he was gone, either deployed, worked up to a deployment, long exercises, that where you're gone for weeks at a time, days at a time. And so we did spend a lot of time apart during that time. And then when he got, there's the combat deployment, and then he got out of the Marine Corps after that shortly, and we went into full-time ministry. Yeah. Went on staff at our church, and then a few years after that moved to the San Francisco Bay Area for Jeremy to be a senior pastor at a church there. And it was while we were at that church that we were connected with Mighty Oaks. You attended a men's program, and then shortly after that we started talking about starting a women's program. And so I was asked to help be on the team that would help kind of develop the women's program. And we had been through quite a few things, in our life up to that point. And it was an interesting time for us because we had just, Jeremy had shortly before that attended a men's program, started kind of helping teach at the programs and all of that. And so I think being reconnected to military families again started to maybe kind of bring up some things maybe that we had been through. and allowed us to start healing in some of those areas, talking about some of those things. But at that point in my life, when I attended, I would say attended the women's program, because when I first kind of attended, it was kind of a mock program that
you were attending the ones that you guys were starting.
Yes,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we kind of had a planning session where we were put through kind of a mock program where we were taught the classes by some of the guys. We were taught the classes. We were kind of brought through the same process that the men were brought through at the time at a program where we did like the life plans and we heard all the classes and those kinds of things. We shared testimonies with each other of the ladies that were part of that group at that time. And so it was kind of during that time that I say, I went through the program, that time that I realized there were some things in my life that I didn't have that I needed to have. One of those things was I did not really at that time have, I would say, close connections with women in my life that I could really talk to about some of the things that I was struggling with. At that time, you were a pastor at a church, and so I couldn't really talk to people if I was struggling, in my marriage or with that relationship. And so it was a really interesting time for me because with that, I realized I needed to really start having some of those relationships in my life with women and be more open about talking about struggles that I had had in my life and in our marriage and all of that. And so that was kind of the time for me where I started realizing I needed to kind of start processing through some of those things, being more open about talking about them, and I guess fighting for those things, in my life. And so from that, we started doing women's programs. We developed a curriculum and all of that, and we started, having a women's program. And so when I see ladies come to the program that maybe are struggling in general, because I believe that you don't have to have struggled in the same way to know what it feels like to have a difficult time in your life. I think it can be so healing to meet someone that has struggled, and they know what it's like to fight through that, have to come out of it, know what it looks like, on the other side and how to do that. And so when I meet ladies who are struggling and having a difficult time, and maybe it is finding connections with other women, maybe it is having those close relationships in your life with other women, it really is, to me, just sharing that part of myself, I guess, that maybe would help that one person to see, okay, well, I'm not the only one that feels that way.
Yeah.
And so for me, mostly, when I am teaching or speaking to the ladies that come to us in our women's program, it would mostly be speaking from the perspective of a spouse and a woman, really. And so, and because what we tell ladies at the beginning, it doesn't really, it matters, but what we're focusing on is how to be the woman that God created you to be, and what does your life look like now moving forward, past some of those struggles, through some of those struggles, and coming out on the other side of that and living a life that would be victorious, and living a life that now you can move forward in a new way, in that way. And so, not that it doesn't matter what you have done in your life, but
Sure.
let's allow that to be a part of your life, and kind of move forward from there. And so I think it can be really empowering for women to get a hold of that, and especially from the perspective of so many different testimonies, so many different stories, so many different perspectives.
Yeah.
And so as part of our women's team, we have ladies who, like me, are spouses. We have ladies that are a spouse and their husband is a first responder, maybe still active duty. We have had a couple of ladies like that. We have ladies on our leadership team that are also veterans themselves. And so from that perspective, it gives us such a broad way to be able to minister to the ladies that are coming to us. And from kind of every, we have the veteran perspective, we have the spouse perspective, we have the first responder spouse perspective. We have so many ladies that are able to speak into different situations, that it really allows us to have that true, like you said, peer-to-peer, testimonial-based kind of mentorship program, from the classes being taught to just kind of having that one-on-one time with the ladies.
Yeah, that's good. I think having the diversity of instructors and team leaders to help folks walk through that is really, really important. And part of that is, you look at someone, if you're struggling, when you look at someone else, generally you see the very best of them, and you might come to the conclusion that they've never struggled with anything, they've never had a problem. And so that perspective that we don't all need to struggle the same way, it's just understanding that there is a way to move through struggle and get to the other side of that that's really important. So you don't have to look at someone and say, well, they haven't struggled exactly like me, so they can't help me. What you need to do is look at someone who is further along than you,
Right.
understand that they have struggled, but they've continued to move forward. And so maybe, even though our struggles aren't exactly the same, they can help me with that.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things about, our story, yours and mine, that has always been interesting is, I left the Marine Corps, started working at a church. And so, whether it's right or wrong, you feel like you're in a situation where if you struggle, you can't let people know that you're struggling.
Yeah.
Even on a church staff, which is where we were. And, specifically during that first year after I left the Marine Corps, we had a lot of struggles, and we had 2 little kids we were trying to take care of, and I was a mess processing out of the Marine Corps. But that's just something we just kind of sat on and dealt with. Got a little bit more stable, maybe functional, and then even started pastoring. And again, like you said, you're in that position where I'm hurting in some areas, but I can't ask for help. So you just kind of keep pushing it down and keep pushing it down and keep moving on. And until you finally deal with that, you're not able really to move forward. And you and I have had these conversations, and we look at our lives different. But I look back and I say, for about a year, we really had a hard time. And you would say probably for 10 years after I came back from the Marine Corps, we had a hard time.
Yep.
And
so.
we had to have a moment where, not a moment, but as a process of time where we started to work through some of those things.
Right.
And I think that's what's important for people to understand is everyone struggles. Everyone is struggling. What you're looking for is not someone who's struggled exactly the same way that you have, but someone that can help you move forward from that.
Yeah, and when you look at, it's always like that. When you look at people on the outside, they look like they have it all together. And I think that's part of kind of what our Imperfect show is a little bit about. It's just like you look at other people and you're like, oh wow, like their life is perfect. They've got it all together. And when we have met ladies that have come to the women's program, and even when I attended and I met some of the ladies that I was going to be on the team with to develop the women's program, I'm like, oh wow, like these, they've got it all together. And similar when we meet ladies that come to us, on the ladies on our leadership team, the students, they have the walls up, just immediately they have walls up. They feel very, they're hurt and they're broken. And like, these ladies cannot relate to me. No one knows what it's like to be me. No one knows what it's like to struggle. And they look at us who maybe are, like you said, a few steps ahead, and like, oh wow, these, like they've got it all together. And then they start hearing, ladies share stories.
Then they get to know you guys and realize you don't have it all together.
And I think one of the things that we do in all of our programs, the men's program too, is we have a class and then we break out into a smaller group to discuss. And we go through some questions and we discuss the material that was just taught. But through that, a lot of on our women's program side, we call it the group facilitators, are able to, just kind of share a little bit about themselves and kind of some things they've been through. And even if they're not teaching a class or sharing a testimony in front of the whole group, they're able to do that within the ladies in their group. And just hearing from them, we start to realize, oh yeah, like they're not perfect. They don't have it all together. They do know what it's like to go through hard things. But they are a few steps ahead, and they've kind of come out on the other side, or kind of starting to come out on the other side. And so they know what that looks like.
You said that the program really works towards understanding who God created you to be and living according to that. I'd like for you to explain that a little bit and why that's important and what that even means. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that we're a faith-based program, but that doesn't mean that everyone who attends the program has a faith background.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of people who attend the program would say they either don't believe in God, they haven't really thought about it. You have the atheist that says, I don't believe in God, the agnostic that says, I don't know anything about God. People who would say, I once considered myself a Christian, but I've been hurt by God. So everything on the spectrum. And I think that's important to acknowledge as well, that you don't have to be a Christian or go to church or have Christian friends to attend the program. That's not what learn to align your life to the life God has created you to live means.
Yeah.
But that is the way forward. And so can you talk about why that's important and what that means to be the person that, the woman that God created you to be? What does that mean, and why is that important in the context of marriages that are hurting and post-traumatic stress disorder and sexual violence? I mean, these are all things you deal with. Why is that what you come back to as the solution?
It's important because we all kind of have, whether we acknowledge it or realize it or not, have kind of a standard that we use to evaluate ourselves in our life. And it's important to have something that you can align your life to that doesn't ever change. And so when we look at the principles that we look at in the Bible and what we believe to be the principles that we should align ourselves to be the person that God created us to be, those are things that never change. They have not changed over time.
Right.
They will never change. And so aligning our life to something that is fixed is just so important. And what we say, to ladies is maybe you don't believe in God. Maybe you don't have a relationship with God. Maybe you've never heard any of this stuff ever before. But why not just look at this in a different way? Maybe you have always believed this one way. Maybe you don't believe in anything. Maybe you just live life day by day, figuring it out as you go along. But why not just look at life? Why not just look at yourself as a person in a little bit of a different way that you've never thought of before, or that you've never looked at before? Maybe you've never thought of these things before. And we basically just take, our program is based on really just principles, characteristics that we find in Scripture to kind of apply to our lives to be the person that God created us to be. And
Right.
so really, that's all it is. It's really very simple, but it's important because we just need to align our lives to something that is fixed and that never changes.
I think that people generally, they are chasing their version of truth. They're trying to find an identity that makes sense to them, somewhere that they feel like they belong or that they feel comfortable. And they spend their life chasing that, and then trauma or difficult relationships, all of the things that we would deal with, insert themselves into that, and it kind of warps your understanding of what is truth and where can I be accepted. Often people will step back and say, I can't trust anyone. They become very cynical because they've been hurt. And we need something that transcends all of that, that's bigger than all of that.
Right.
Where a lot of therapies and a lot of treatments for post-traumatic stress and, again, the relationship issues, they deal with whatever that, we would call it a presenting problem, whatever the fruit issue is, they deal with that. Well, you're not talking to your husband, so here's what you need to do. You're having nightmares, here's what you need to do. You've been abused in this way, so here's what you need to do. What we talk about is understanding that if there is a creator, then there's a plan. And if there's a plan, then the thing that transcends your pain and transcends your brokenness and transcends your hurt is aligning to that plan, which it does. It sounds very, very simple, but it's saying, I'm on this path over here and I can't figure out why I'm not getting to the destination. Well, you're on the wrong path.
Yeah.
So get over here and understand what you were created to be, who you were created to be, what you were created to do, and begin doing that.
Yeah.
And that, it doesn't fix everything. It just allows you to move forward in spite of those things.
And I think it can be a little frustrating because when you start to kind of go through some of the classes or go through some of the discussion times, it's not like we're giving a list of do's and don'ts. And you're having this problem, and so these are the things you should do, and these are the things you should stop doing. It's not about having a list of things to follow.
Right.
It's more about being a certain way, becoming a certain way, and it's those characteristics that are important to have in your life, those principles that are important to apply to your life, and then the outcome will be this. It's just a process, and that's what gets really frustrating sometimes for people, is that it's not a one-day thing, it's not an overnight change, it's a process, and it's something that is important to be patient about, to be willing to kind of go through that process and allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to go through some decision making, allow yourself to kind of follow that process, and that's what we call it. So that can be a little frustrating too. It's not just like, these are what you need to do, and it's going to change like this overnight. And a lot of people are expecting immediate fix, immediate change, and it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, that's good. How do you deal with the different groups that you serve? Again, on the men's side, primarily what a program consists of is someone who is a veteran, who is an active duty service member, or who is a first responder. So for the veterans and active duty service members, they're at different stages in their journey, but they're on the same path. The first responder community, it connects so well to the veteran and military community, so that's never an issue. But then if we have a spouse, we have, a spouse, maybe one or two, they'll just fall into what's happening there because the majority is those with other experiences. And again, the dynamic is very, very different in the women's program. How do you address people who would say, well, they weren't in the military, so they can't help me, or they weren't a spouse, so they can't help me, or they haven't experienced this kind of trauma, so they can't help me? How do you deconflict that or diffuse that? And I know that's been an issue in the past, trying to help folks work through this. How do you deal with that kind of up front?
We kind of really up front, one of the first things we talk about is identity and where we find that and certain things that we place our identity in. Where do we find our identity? And that's kind of one of the first things we talk about really in the first class, kind of when we're laying out, several things about what the program's going to be all about. And we do have someone share a testimony, a lady that has been to our program before, that is a veteran, and she'll share her testimony, kind of what her experience was like while she was there. And that really kind of breaks down a lot of walls of ladies that, are like, this is totally not for me.
Right.
And, I can think of last year we had a lady come to our program. She's a veteran, and she walked in and is like, I want to leave right now because there's a room full of women and I don't know any of them, and I feel really uncomfortable, and I'm sure none of them know what it's like to be me. And she had already decided that she was going to go home. And so this was before we even had our very first class, our very first meeting. She had already decided, I'm going to go home because
you run them off even before
really
you start.
Uncomfortable. I know. So she sat in the first, class where we kind of present all these things, and she heard us say that one of the kind of criticisms that we've received in the past for our women's program is that we don't separate out the spouses and the veterans and first responders, that we have everybody kind of all together. And one of the things we say, up front is we have received this criticism, and we ask ladies just to allow themselves to go through that process, because one of the things that we talk about is that it's not so much about the role that you have in life, and the same way that we can identify ourselves with the roles that we have, whether that is spouse or mom, worker or employee, first responder, whatever that is for you, we tend to identify ourselves and we put our identity in the role that we have in life, rather than who it is that the person that we are and who God created us to be. And it's not so much about what you do in life, but it's about who you are and who God created you to be. And the same as, that is in life, I think the same goes in whatever job we have, whether that is, I'm a veteran, or I'm an active duty, or I'm a first responder, or I am a spouse. That we look at that as like our job kind of.
Right.
And so we identify ourselves with that.
Right.
And so we kind of allow ladies to maybe look at things with a little bit of a bigger picture, is that we're here because you're a woman, and you're a woman who has been created with a design and for a purpose, and that God has that for you in your life. And we just ask them to maybe kind of look at that with a bigger picture in mind. And then we allow one of the ladies who has been to our program in the past, that is a veteran, to share a testimony of kind of what her experience was like when she came. And that really just that, explaining it like that, and then hearing from someone breaks down, a lot of those walls, and it's like, okay, well, I can give it a try. At least, there's people that have gone before me that have experienced this, that felt the same when they came. Right. And this woman in particular, she stayed. And she really, there's a lot of healing that came to her life because of that. She ended up accepting Christ at the end of the session. And so just for her to be able to go through that because a testimony was shared, because she was willing to look at it with a little bit of a bigger picture in mind, and allow herself to be seen as, not just a veteran, not just active duty service member, but I'm a woman who was created with a purpose. And just was willing to look at it, what does that look like for me, and what does God have for me in my life? And so that's kind of how we have started to address it. And we've really kind of seen a lot of that criticism go away, a lot of that, questions has really kind of gone away for us, and people are willing to maybe kind of look at it with a different perspective in mind. Yeah,
that's great. It's crazy how we are so quick to identify with our roles. And we've talked about this in other settings. There are people who identify as a parent. And so when that role changes, when the kids get older and they go off and do what they do, because we identified with the role of parent, now that they're gone, our identity is gone with them. So as they go off to college, our identity goes off to college with them. And we see that again throughout the military. People who have served in the military, they identify with that job or that rank or that military branch of service or whatever. And when that's gone, they don't know who they are anymore. They've lost their identity. So many of these issues come back to that. Who are you really? Which again, I think goes back to understanding there is a creator. If there's a creator, there's a design, and we need to learn how to align our lives to that. Do a job, do a really good job at your job, but don't identify with that job.
Yeah, and really just that simple thing, because we've met people that have come to us who are in that position where they've gotten out of the military and now it's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going to go.
I don't know who I am.
I don't even know who I am, because this has been me for such a long time. Or my husband just retired, and this has been our life for so long, and I don't know what to do now. I don't know who I am. And so the simple fact of aligning yourself to this blueprint, to these principles, can be so empowering, can be so freeing, because now it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if those things go away. It doesn't matter, if this new thing comes, because you have aligned yourself and you have found your identity in something that is fixed and doesn't change.
That's right. That's good. What are some of, apart from identity, what are some of the other kind of big ticket struggles that women have that come to the program? Because I know that maybe you don't fall into one of those demographics. Maybe you're listening to this and you don't fall into one of those demographics. Again, it goes back to not saying we have to all struggle the same way, but we've all struggled. And I would imagine that a lot of the struggles, although they're brought on by different things, a lot of the struggles are the same. So identity is a big one. What are some of the other struggles that the women that you are able to serve are dealing with, that you have to kind of process through over the course of a week?
I just would say identity is a huge one, because a lot of times that puts everything in perspective.
Once your identity is right,
you kind of start to see like, okay, well, I've struggled in this area because I haven't found my identity in the right place. I have not, made that right. And so once that is we start kind of working through that, a lot of things really start to fall into place. The rest of the time we do have one class on post-traumatic stress. And that is really impactful for a lot of women on all sides to hear, because it really addresses maybe some things that they have personally experienced, but also maybe someone that is close to them that has experienced, and it allows them to kind of see things. We address it in kind of a really different way. And so that really opens up a lot of, I think, doors to allow things to kind of process. And once those two things really are, have gone through, that we've gone through, really everything else just kind of starts to kind of fall in place. We see ladies that struggle with, and I talked a little bit about this earlier, connection with other women. That's huge for, because we tend to isolate ourselves and we think that we're alone.
Women don't trust each other.
No. We're pretty judgmental of each other, and we don't.
Right.
It's trust in a woman, in a relationship with another woman, is really, really huge. And so that is another huge thing that we deal with as well. And we have had ladies come to us very guarded, very because they've put themselves kind of on that island where I don't allow people to get close to me. And they have said, I've never allowed women to get close to me. I never thought I could, but now being here, it's allowed some healing to take place in that area, and maybe some hurts that have taken place in the past. And now we're not, I'm able to kind of work through some of that, because now I have women in my life that I know I can trust, that I know will come around me, and that I know I can go to, for things. So I would say identity, kind of processing through that, that post-traumatic stress issue, which is huge for a lot of, military families. And then the connection with other women, friendships, in that way, that is a really big thing that I want to say the majority of ladies that come to us have dealt with at some point in their life, or are dealing with, and they've just decided, I'm never going to have close relationships with other women. And so that's just never going to be in my life. And so allowing healing to take place in that area as well. Obviously, spouses deal with a lot of hurt from their husbands, and whether they're now divorced, or whether they're separated, or whether they're still married and there's been a lot of hurt in that marriage, that's a huge thing we deal with, is marriage issues for the spouses that we have that come through. And so that's something we do have a class on marriage, and what that should look like for you, and who the kind of person that you should be in that marriage. And really all of our classes are addressed, from that perspective that we talked about.
Who should you be in that context?
Being the woman that you are supposed to be in this context. And so once identity, once post-traumatic stress, and once they kind of start to find some connections with women, then kind of some of these other areas, like marriage, and we have a class on being a mom, those kinds of things are really all on those premises. You know, they're kind of based on all that stuff. So we have a class on faith, but again, it's being, what does that look like for you personally? And so I would say those are kind of the issues I say, you know, that we would deal with mostly is identity, post-traumatic stress, connection with other women and what that can look like for you. And then we deal with a lot of marriage issues and hurts in marriage.
What do you say to single women who are sitting in a marriage class, they're sitting in a mom's class? Is that something that you allow them to not sit in, or do you address that to them as well?
We do address, you know, at the very beginning, we kind of identify the fact that everyone is different. Everyone has a different life situation, and so a particular class might not apply to your situation right now. But we focus so much on the principles, and we're going to be addressing characteristics that should be a part of your life as you try to be this woman that, you know, following this biblical blueprint. And so even if a particular class doesn't apply to your situation, that there's always principles within the class that you can apply to your life, or that you can apply to a relationship that you have in your life, or that you can apply and maybe tuck it away for the future.
Sure.
Because you never know what your life is going to be look like moving forward. And so that's kind of what we encourage them with. We have not really allowed, you know, it's not optional. And that's another thing that we say.
You don't get to pick and choose.
You don't get to decide what classes you're going to go to. It's not a retreat or a conference in that sense where we give you a list of classes and you get to kind of pick which classes you're going to go to. It's not like that. But we do ask ladies to sit, take notes, and again, just look at it with a different perspective. And there's something in every class that can be applied to your situation. And I mean, we've had testimonies of ladies that have come through that are single and have taken notes in every class. And I still remember teaching a class on, I think it was the parenting class, teaching it and watching this girl sitting here, and she's single, and taking like pages of notes during that class, because that's what we ask, is even if it doesn't apply to your situation right now, there's always something to be learned. There's always maybe some things that you can apply right now to a relationship in your life, even if it's not a parenting type relationship or a marriage type relationship. So that's really what we try to do. And the person that's teaching the class really tries to give it a, you know, I'm speaking specifically to a marriage relationship or to a parenting relationship, but maybe tries to add in some principles that can be applied to on more of a broader spectrum as well.
That's great. I know, particularly for military spouses, post-military, one of the common struggles is that the spouse will fall into the role of caregiver. And they have a spouse who maybe was injured, they had to separate from the military for medical reasons, or they retired, but they're dealing with medical issues, and they fall into that role of caregiver. Can you talk about that for a second? Because I think that that's an important role. However, it's a really difficult identity to be able to carry with you. And I know a lot of the spouses that attend the program are kind of in that place. What do you say to someone who's, you know, they are the caregiver, that's a reality, that's who they are, but they need to think a little bit higher than that. How do you address that, or how do you process that?
Yeah, the ladies I've met who are kind of in that role, it's almost like a really, they're really down on themselves, you know, because they don't have anything, they don't almost feel like they're their own person. And they've kind of lost themselves in all of that, because they spend their entire lives, I mean, almost sometimes 24 hours a day, every day, caring for this person and the needs, you know, for this person. Sometimes it's literally having to do everything for them. Sometimes it's having to do everything with them. Sometimes it's, you know, they spend their whole days encouraging that person to get out of bed, and then do this. Now let's go outside. Now let's, you know, and so they spend so much of their time. And so they're almost, and this is where identity is huge for them, is because they almost completely lose their identity because of caring for another person. Sometimes it's more than one person, because I've met a lot of ladies who are not only caring for their husbands, but maybe they have children with special needs, and they feel so alone and so lost in all of that, that they completely lose any sense of who they are. And so that's something that we really encourage them to do, you know, while they're with us, is maybe put some things, and this is maybe more of a practical, put some things in place in your life. There's so many programs where you can maybe find someone to come into the home to help you for a day a week, so that you can have some time to yourself.
And not feel guilty about that.
Right.
Right.
Some people have, parents close by that are willing to help. And so really maybe reaching outside of yourself and making it like that you're not the only person that has to care for them, because there can be a lot of guilt in that you are the only one that can do this. You're the only one that can take care of this person the right way. Well, the reality is that there's a lot of people that would love to help if they were given the opportunity, to do that. And maybe it's not family, maybe it's looking a little bit outside your situation to find that help. But before that even, it's making sure that you have your identity in the right place. And this is where the ladies that have come to us that are caregivers, this is such a huge thing for them, is identity. And where do I find that? Because it's so wrapped up in caring for this other person that I've completely lost it. And so that is a huge topic that really for them, once they kind of get past that, everything seems to kind of fall into place. And not that it's not difficult still, and that it won't be difficult, moving forward, but having your identity in the right place really is huge for the ladies that I've met that are caregivers, and just continuing to, it's kind of a daily thing that you have to do something for yourself every day. You have to kind of check in with yourself every day to make sure that you're continuing to find your identity in the right place. And so there's so many, that's such a huge topic, because it's a large group of ladies that come to us usually are a caregiver in some way or have been in the past. And so it's just a really, that's a huge topic, and something that we deal with a lot.
Acknowledging though that, again, that's what you do, that's not who you are.
Right.
Has got to figure in somewhere.
Because, the label of caregiver is, in the military, it's a huge, there's so many programs available for them, and so many, there's a huge, and
it's a wonderful thing.
It is.
They're doing it out of love.
Yes.
And,
yes.
It's not to say it's not good.
No.
It's just not a good place to live.
And it's allowing those resources to be available to you, and it's allowing them to be, like we said, a part of your life and a part of, what you do. But again, it's not becoming who you are, and it's not allowing that to, that's what you are, is you're the caregiver, and that's kind of all you're ever going to be. And that's the danger in that, is allowing that to be such a part of your life that starts to become who you are.
That's good. Personal responsibility is a big part of all of this. And whether it's a caregiver who says, I can't attend a program like this, or I can't find friends, or I can't do whatever, I can't do that because of what's going on. Personal responsibility is a really big part of that. It must be integral to what's happening, right? You have to decide, I'm going to, in spite of this circumstance or this situation, I'm going to take those steps, which means I then have to make some other decisions. For veterans, sometimes it's the personal responsibility of saying, what's happened to me does not have a hold on me. It's the craziest thing in our world, the world that we live in here at Mighty Oaks, because there are so many reasons you can give for not doing the thing that's helpful. And we go across the board. It's caregivers, it's veterans, it's the active duty community, it's people who have been abused in one way or another. There's a lot of reasons why, I'm the victim. And I think a big part of getting help in all of this is saying, I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to go to a place, again, whether it's a Mighty Oaks Foundation program or it's something else, I'm going to go to a place where I can get help, because I may not be able to control what's happened to me or even the job that I have right now, but I can control the steps that I take forward. So it's that personal responsibility. How do you help people move through that or break those walls down? I know you have these conversations because we live in the same house, and you're on the phone sometimes trying to help people through that, and I know in the programs you deal with that. How do you help people see that? I've got to be responsible for myself. I've got to stop making excuses because my husband's an idiot, or my job, or my experience, or my trauma. How do you get beyond that? You said earlier you had to fight to have friends, and you had to understand you needed to fight for these things. That's just taking responsibility. That was a really long question.
Yeah.
But how do you deal with that?
It's hard because it's a naturally human thing to blame other people for your situation, to blame, circumstances. I am like this because, of my circumstances, or because of this other person, or what has been done to me. At the end of the day, everyone has to take some kind of personal responsibility for how they're going to like move forward in your life.
Right.
You cannot control what other people do to you.
Right.
Unfortunately, we live in a world full of sin, and therefore people sin, and sometimes horrible things happen, and horrible things are done
They
to
will
us
hurt you.
that
Right.
we cannot control. And that's the unfortunate reality that we live in this world, because it's like that.
Yeah.
But we cannot control what happens to us. We cannot control what other people do to us, maybe the way that you've been hurt, but you can control how you respond. You can control how you move forward. You can control all of those things. And so that's where that personal responsibility comes in, is, okay, maybe I am a victim, you know, maybe because something how horrible has happened to me, or someone has done something horrible to me, and that's true. And we can't do anything about that. But you can't stay there. You can.
You can.
And you know, but
it's a decision to stay there.
Yes. If
It's
you
not just
decide
happening.
to stay there,
Yeah.
it's because you have personally decided that this is where I'm going to stay for the rest of my life. I am not going to move forward. I'm not going to make any changes in my life. And I mean, honestly, unfortunately, we have people that come to our programs, I know on both sides, that decide that they're going to stay there. And you know,
Why
they
would
come,
someone do that? Why do people do that?
I don't know.
Yeah. I guess that's the question.
Again, that's like, I mean, it's a
comfortable,
personal
even though
choice.
it's,
I think
it's
it is.
painful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's where maybe that's what it is. It's comfortable. That's where people find a lot of comfort in sameness. And if you have lived this way for a really long time,
Even if you know it's not the best thing, right? Yeah.
and you know, maybe it's just too hard. I mean, it is really, really hard. It's hard to kind of look at something in a different way and really even apply those things in a different way than maybe you're used to. It's really, really hard. And it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be fun, probably. But it's something that you have to personally decide, you know, I'm going to do this differently moving forward, and I'm going to make these changes in my life. And, you know, it's just hard, and it's hard work. And a lot of people just aren't willing to put in the hard work.
Right.
And it's for everybody in your life. It's whether or not you have maybe made a wrong decision and now have to, you know, decide, I'm going to do this differently now. I'm going to make a change in my life. I'm going to decide to do things differently moving forward. Whether or not you maybe have not struggled in a big way, or have not fallen in a big way, or, you know, whatever. It's hard work every day to do the right thing and to live your life, you know, in this way. And so it's just hard.
Yeah.
And so it's comfortable. It's really hard to do something
It's hard to do something
different.
else. Yeah.
And people are just comfortable with being, you know, the same.
Right.
And just having their situation not change, having maybe not change yourself. And so we have a lot of, you know, people leave our program, and we, before they leave us, we try to help them put together a plan for when they go home, and some things that you can immediately implement into your life that will allow you to kind of take these steps.
Right.
And so we have, you know, ladies go home, and this, I mean, this is me too. You know, I went home with a plan, and do very, very well. And they start to kind of implement some of those things. They kind of start to move forward in this way, and they have done some things in their life, and they decided to do some things differently moving forward. And so they do very well. And they start to kind of make some of those changes because they've taken the personal responsibility to make those changes and to do those things. Then we have some people that go home, and they start to kind of do some of those things, but as soon as things get hard, and they kind of fall back to what they had before. And so I think it's just really difficult, because it is human nature to, you know, not want to do hard things.
Right. And again, that's where setting that standard, that goal that doesn't change is so important, because it's not going to shift with how I feel or what's happening at home or what's happening in my life.
Yeah. And
it doesn't change.
It could take a daily check, a twice daily check maybe of yourself,
right,
to, you know, ask yourself, how am I doing these things? And am I really aligning myself to this never changing principle, or this never changing standard that, you know, we've talked about? And so that could be, you know, it's a daily thing. And that's what we say a lot of the time, that it's kind of a daily checking yourself, a daily realigning yourself. It's just a process of that. And so some people are just not willing to go through that process and to do the hard work that it takes to, because again, you know, you look at people that look like they have it all together and have it all figured out. Well, that's not because of it's easy. You know, it's hard work.
It's because they've worked hard
to get to that place where you still don't have it all figured out, but maybe you do in some ways look like you do, but not because it comes easy, but because maybe you've personally decided that I'm willing to do the hard work that it takes to be this person or to get to this place.
That's right. What are some of the stories of people who have attended the program that stick out to you? Maybe some highlights. Someone that came maybe with one attitude and left with a different attitude. Maybe someone that's on a leadership team now. One of the unique things I think about all of our Mighty Oaks programs is that all of the folks on our leadership team are people who came through the program as students. So everyone attended as a student and then went through a training process and a leadership process to then be able to help others move forward in their own lives, which is why we say it's a mentor or a peer-to-peer mentorship type of relationship. What are some of the stories that maybe stick out to you?
We had just recently had a program in February, and so end of February we had a women's program. That was kind of our most recent one, and I've been able to have another one, due to our circumstances.
We're dealing with that right now. We're trying to figure that out.
Yes, but we did have a lady come to our program in February that was really struggling with extending forgiveness to a member in her family that had done something to another member in her family, and she was really struggling with that and how to let go of that and how do I deal with that. And just was really almost holding on to that and was kind of bitter about that situation and had kind of really separated herself from this other member in her family, had stopped talking to them and all of that. And so she pretty much went through almost the last day of, I'm fine with doing all these other things and putting all these other changes in place in my life, but this one area is kind of untouchable. Like I'm not doing anything with that. And so one of the last classes we have is about faith. And, we talk about forgiveness in that and really just referencing the forgiveness that is available to us through what Christ did for us on the cross and just kind of really laying things out more in that way. She was able to understand that, okay, it's not really my place to kind of hold this over this person, but because of what Christ did for me and the way that he forgave me, I can extend forgiveness to this person. And that doesn't mean that what happened is going to go away or that the consequences of it are not going to be there still. But because of that, I can, extend this. And it was such a freeing thing for her to be able to do that. And, she said, I know that I was here just to hear that.
That's great.
And so, and that just the way, even seeing how she's moved forward from that and now having that relationship be reconciled and made right and allowed this person to come back, into her family, really allowed to be part of their family. And so that was one of a more recent story of how someone, she almost left with like, I'm going to do all these other things, but this one thing I'm just not willing to let go of.
The hardest thing, right?
Yes, and that was a really difficult thing for her to do. And all through the time she was telling stories of why she's not able to reconcile this relationship and why she's not able to allow this person back into and it was really just something that she needed to let go of and really make personal for herself, and she was able to do that. And so that was a really it was just a really neat thing to be a part of and to just watch her be free from that.
Yeah, that's great. From our perspective, we know that folks who are struggling and hurting and are hopeless, they don't have to stay that way. And so that's the frustration in some of this sometimes is we know that, it's not that we have all the answers, it's that we can point you to the answers and connect you with other folks who have struggled the same way that you have or a similar way and have been able to move forward. But there is an answer. There is hope. And so we want folks to understand that we're not telling you what to do, we're just offering a source of hope and direction to you. One of the struggles, again, you just mentioned this, is this time frame. We were supposed to have a women's program a few weeks ago, and we haven't been able to because of everything that's going on in our world. But still, ladies connecting to each other and staying in contact, virtually and some even in person, and continuing to make sure those connections are happening and those relationships are being built and staying together in anticipation of hopefully in the next several weeks we'll be able to have another in-person program. How does a lady who needs to attend the program, how do they connect to us and how do we get them set up for the program?
Just visit our website, www.mightyoaksprograms.org, and we have an applications tab on there that you can fill out an application. And really it's as simple as that. Just fill out an application, and then we have an applications manager that will be in touch with you and let you know kind of the steps moving forward in that and what to do after kind of the application process is finished. And then we can place you in one of our programs.
one of the great things I think about all of our programs is that they don't cost the students anything.
Right.
We work very, very hard to raise the funds necessary so that we can not only provide the place and the meals and all the resources while the program's taking place. It's over the course of a week while that's happening, but we'll also get you there. So wherever you are in the country, if you need to get to one of the programs, again, because of our donors, we're able to cover that cost as well. So got nothing to lose.
No.
It's a couple days, and you'll get to know some good people,
Yeah.
and that's wonderful, and very, very thankful for that. So, well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would like to say one thing.
Please.
So
Say two things if you'd like.
For ladies that are listening to this, sometimes I've heard some of this feedback that, okay, we hear you guys talk about programs, we hear all the videos you guys put out, and sometimes they've been following us for years before they finally make the decision to, I'm going to fill out an application, I'm going to go to the program. So I would say that if you're in that place, just do
Yeah,
it.
just do it.
Just fill out the application, because you never know what is going to be on the other side of that. You never know, even the people that you can connect with, at a program that can be a help to you, that you can be a help to. We talk a lot about even like paying it forward, and you never know how your presence at one of the programs can impact other people, but you also don't know what that can do for you, on the other side. So it's easy to say, don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Don't allow that to keep you from doing it, but just take that first step and just fill out the application, and you just never know what that can be for you in your life.
Since a lot of people are locked in their houses right now,
why not?
take some time. MightyOaksPrograms.org. Look at the website, and you can apply, and we'll get you all set up. But thank you for watching, and I hope that was a help to you. Again, we talk about our program. That's the context we come from, but it's not just about the program. It's about understanding your identity is not what you do. It's in who you were created to be. Move toward that, and you'll find great freedom in your life, which is, it's the hope that we all have, and it's amazing. Again, if you have not yet subscribed, please do that. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and that lets you know, again, I say this all the time, but that lets you know when more content comes online. We'd love to share that with you. If you're listening somewhere else, over at Mojo50 or via podcast, again, take some time, jump over to YouTube, and we'd love to share this with you. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.